It was 4 in the morning when a wild scream pierced the walls of the building like a knife, a sharp, hysterical scream filled with rage. I heard violent banging against my door. Bang, bang, bang. The neighbors started turning on their lights. Someone poked their head out into the hallway, and I was still sitting in my living room with a cup of tea in my hands. I did not move an inch because I knew exactly who was out there, and I knew exactly why she was screaming. My daughter-in-law, Sarah, had just discovered that I changed the locks on my apartment. My apartment. The one I bought with 40 years of work. The one I paid for by cleaning offices at night, scrubbing floors at dawn, carrying bags of trash that weighed more than my soul. This place is mine, and today finally I locked it again. But for you to understand why I reached this point, I need to tell you the whole story. I need you to know who I am and who I thought my daughter-in-law was. My name is Linda, and I am 66 years old. I have been a widow for 15 years. My husband died of a heart attack one cold winter night. Without warning, without goodbye, he left me alone with a 12-year-old son and a mountain of bills to pay. I did not have time to cry. I had to clean. I had to work 3 shifts so that Michael, my son, could study, have clean clothes, and never feel like he lacked anything. I raised him alone, without help, without complaining, because that is what mothers do, right? We break our souls in silence so they can grow up whole. And Michael grew up well. He graduated and got a good job at a tech company. He met a girl named Sarah, tall with a perfect smile and always with impeccable nails. The first time I saw her, I thought how elegant, how polite. My son is so lucky. When Michael told me they were getting married, I cried with happiness. Finally, I was going to have a family complete again. Finally, someone else would fill this silent house. Because yes, at first, they did not have a place to live. They were saving to buy their own place. And I, the naive woman that I was, opened my doors wide. I told them to stay as long as they needed, that my house was their house. Michael hugged me. Sarah smiled, and I thought I was doing the right thing. I believed that a mother should always help her children, always. The first few months were good. Sarah cooked sometimes and asked me how my day had been. She called me Mom with so much affection. Michael worked a lot and arrived late, but he always gave me a kiss on the forehead before sleeping. I felt useful. I felt loved. I even started to think that maybe the loneliness was over forever. But something changed. It was subtle at first, so subtle that I almost did not notice it. Sarah started moving things. One day I arrived, and my favorite vase, the one my husband gave me, was no longer on the table. She had put it in a closet. When I asked her, she said, "Oh, Mom, it just looks so old-fashioned there. It does not match anything." She smiled, and I swallowed the discomfort. I did not want to seem difficult. I did not want to be the bitter mother-in-law from the stories. Then it was my armchair, the armchair where I sat every night to watch my shows. One day I arrived, and there was a new piece of furniture in its place, modern and uncomfortable. Sarah explained that she had bought it because we needed to modernize the space a little. We needed. As if this apartment belonged to both of us, as if she had the right to decide what stays and what goes. But I said nothing, because Michael looked happy, and I did not want to ruin his happiness. So I smiled, nodded, and sat on that horrible furniture that left my back sore. Then came the friends. Sarah started inviting her friends to my apartment without telling me. I would arrive from work exhausted with swollen feet and find 4 women laughing in my living room, drinking wine with music at full volume. The first time it happened, Sarah told me, "Oh, sorry, Mom." And the worst of all is that Sarah never thanked me. Never. She acted as if all this was her right, as if I owed her something. One night I arrived tired after cleaning 3 floors of offices. My knees hurt my back, my hands. I just wanted to get home, take a hot bath, and go to sleep. But when I opened the door, the loud music hit me. There was a party in my living room. People I did not know, drinking, laughing, smoking. The smoke hit me in the face as soon as I entered. I froze in the entryway. Sarah was in the center with a glass in her hand, laughing with her friends. When she saw me, she waved her hand as if nothing was happening. "Oh, Mom, I did not know you were going to arrive so early. We are celebrating." "I sold a lot this week," she said, and kept laughing. "No one greeted me. Oh, no one turned down the music. No one put out their cigarette. I felt invisible. In my own house, I was invisible. I locked myself in my bedroom. I cried in silence so they would not hear me, and I heard the party until 3 in the morning, until they left, until finally the silence returned. The next day, when I came out, I found my living room destroyed, dirty glasses everywhere, stains on the sofa, a broken bottle on the floor, and Sarah slept peacefully in her room. She did not clean anything, so I cleaned, as always, because if I did not do it, no one would. And because I was already used to cleaning up other people's messes. I had cleaned other people's offices for 40 years, and now I was cleaning my daughter-in-law's mess in my own house. I tried to talk to Michael again. This time, I looked for him at his work. I went to his office. I needed him to listen to me without Sarah being present. I told him everything. I told him that I could not take it anymore, that I needed my space, that I felt crushed in my own house. He listened to me, but when I finished speaking, he sighed deeply and told me, "Mom, I know it is difficult, but we are saving money. We just need a few more months. Please be patient. A few more months." They had already been living with me for 1.5 years, and every day was worse. But I nodded, because he was my son, because I loved him, because I did not want to lose him. So I swallowed my pain once more and returned home in silence. But then something happened that froze my blood. One afternoon I was returning from the market with heavy bags. I walked up the stairs slowly because the elevator was broken, and when I reached my floor I heard voices inside my apartment. Voices I did not recognize. I opened the door carefully and stood paralyzed. Sarah was there, with a man in a suit, elegant, with a briefcase. They were walking through my living room as if they were in an exhibition. The man was taking notes, looking at the walls, measuring with his eyes. And then I heard the words that broke my soul. "This apartment is a good size, excellent location. It could easily sell for about $120,000, maybe more." Sarah nodded, smiled, and said, "Perfect. Look, my mother-in-law is already old. Soon she is going to need to move to a place with more care. And we need our own space. My mother-in-law is already old, as if I were a burden, as if I were a problem to be solved, as if my life, my home, my refuge were something to get rid of." I dropped the bags. The man turned pale for a second, just a second. Then she recovered her fake smile and said, "Oh, Mom, you scared me. This is Mr. Smith, a real estate agent. He was just giving me some tips, thinking about the future. The future. The future of my apartment." Mr. Smith looked at me uncomfortably. He muttered something about an urgent call and left in a hurry. Sarah stood there, still smiling, as if she had done nothing wrong. I asked her what she was doing, and she answered me calmly, as if it were the most normal thing in the world. "Mom, I am just planning. Michael and I talked about it. You cannot live alone forever. This place is too big for you. It would be better to sell it and move you to a more comfortable place, with nurses, with people your age, a place with nurses, a nursing home." She wanted to put me in a nursing home and sell my apartment, the same one I bought with my sweat, with hands cracked from so much cleaning, with sleepless nights working double shifts, and she wanted to take it from me. She wanted to kick me out of my own house and keep everything. I told her to leave. I screamed at her, "Get out of my apartment immediately." She laughed. She laughed and told me, "Oh, Mom, do not be dramatic. I am only thinking of what is best for you." And she went to her room as if nothing happened, as if I had no right to be furious, as if my life was worth nothing. That night, I waited for Michael. I told him everything. I showed him the agent's card that had been forgotten on the table. I told Michael that Sarah was planning to sell my apartment without my permission. And do you know what he told me? Do you know what my own son answered? The son I raised alone, the one I gave everything to. He told me, "Mom, it is not that serious. She was just exploring options. Maybe she is right. Maybe it would be better if you lived in a place where they can take care of you." In that moment, I knew I had lost him, that Sarah had poisoned him completely, that my son no longer saw me as his mother, but as a burden, as a nuisance, as something old that should be stored in a corner and forgotten. I went to my room without saying a single word. I closed the door, and for the first time in many years, I felt a deep hatred, not towards Michael, but towards myself, for having been so weak, for having allowed everything to reach this point, for having sacrificed my dignity trying to be the perfect mother. But that night, something changed inside me. Something hardened, because I understood that if I did not defend myself, no one would, and that the moment had come to take back my life. The next morning I woke up with a clarity I had not had for months. I looked in the mirror and saw a tired woman with wrinkles. Yes, but not defeated. Not yet. I was 66 years old, but I was not dead. And that apartment was mine, legally mine. No one could take it from me. No one. Not even my daughter-in-law with her fake smile and twisted plans. So I made a decision. I was going to fight back. But not by screaming, not by crying, but in the smartest way possible. With proof, with evidence, with the law on my side. Because if 40 years of cleaning offices had taught me something, it was this. The powerful always have lawyers, and the weak have to be smarter. That afternoon after work, I went to look for Betty, my neighbor on the 4th floor. Betty is 70 years old and has lived in this building longer than me. She's a wise woman, one of those who sees everything without saying anything. I knocked on her door, and when she opened it, she saw my face and knew immediately that something was wrong. She let me in, made me tea, and listened. I told her everything from the beginning. The changed furniture, the clothes she almost threw away, the parties, the real estate agent, everything. When I finished, Betty took my hand and told me something I will never forget. Linda. A mother's love does not mean letting yourself be trampled on. It means teaching respect. And you never taught your daughter-in-law where the boundaries are. Now you have to set them before it is too late. She asked me if I had any proof of what Sarah was doing. I told her no, that everything had been verbal, that I had nothing concrete. Betty thought for a moment and told me, then get it. Record her, take photos, save messages, whatever is necessary. Because if this becomes legal, you are going to need more than your word. She was right, so I started. I bought a new phone with a better camera and started documenting everything. Every box that arrived, every party, everything Sarah moved or changed without my permission. And most importantly, I started recording conversations. Not all of them, just the important ones. The ones that showed her true intentions. I did not have to wait long. A week later, Sarah invited her friends again. I was in my room, but I left the door ajar and recorded. I heard them talking, laughing, and then one of them asked her, "And when are you moving?" Sarah let out that laugh I already knew so well and replied, "Why? This place is already ours." Well, it is still in the old woman's name, but I am working on that. Michael almost convinced her to sign a power of attorney. As soon as we have it, we can do whatever we want. Sell, rent, whatever. And she can go to a nursing home. After all, she is good for nothing anymore other than cleaning. My heart stopped for a second. A power of attorney. They wanted me to sign a power of attorney. That meant they could make legal decisions for me. Sell my apartment, handle my money, everything without me being able to do anything. And Michael was in on the plan. My own son. The boy I raised. The one I held in my arms when he cried. The one I fed with my own body when I did not even have money for milk. He planned to take everything from me. I kept recording. I recorded everything. Every poisoned word that came out of Sarah's mouth. Every cruel laugh. Every twisted plan. And when they finished and left, I guarded that recording as if it were gold. Because it was. It was my weapon. My salvation. The next day, I looked for a lawyer. I checked the internet. I read reviews. And I found one with a good reputation who offered a free consultation. His name was Mr. Davis, an older man, about 65, with thick glasses and a kind smile. I went to his office with all my evidence, the recordings, the photos, everything, the famous power of attorney. Mr. Davis had already warned me that this would happen, and he had told me exactly what to do. Do not show fear, do not show anger, just listen, and then say that I needed time to think about it, that I would not sign anything without reading it calmly, that it was my right. I took a deep breath. I put away my phone and kept cleaning, because cleaning had always calmed me. The repetitive movement, the smell of soap, the shine of the floor after mopping. It made me feel like I still had control over something. I arrived home at 7 in the evening. Michael and Sarah were sitting in the living room, serious, as if they were going to give me bad news. I sat in front of them. Michael cleared his throat. He looked at Sarah. She nodded. And then he began. Mom, we have been thinking a lot about your future, about your well-being. We know you work a lot, that you get tired, that you are not as young as before. I said nothing. I just looked at him. He continued. We have seen some very nice residences, places where there are nurses all day, where you can do activities with people your age, where you do not have to worry about anything, and we think it would be good for you. Sarah intervened with that sweet voice I hated so much. Yes, Mom. It is just that we worry about you. What if you fall and you are alone? What if you get sick? We work all day and cannot take care of you as you deserve. Take care of me. What irony. They had never taken care of me, but I stayed silent. I waited. Then Michael took out some papers. He put them on the table and said, to make the transition easier, we need you to sign this. It is a power of attorney. So we can take care of the sale of the apartment and all the paperwork. That way you will not have to worry about anything legal. We will take care of everything. There was the plan, black and white. They wanted me to sign my life, my house, my future, everything into their hands. I looked at the papers. Then I looked at them, and with the calmest voice I could gather, I said, I need to read this carefully and consult with someone. I do not sign anything without fully understanding what it means. Sarah's expression changed instantly. Her smile disappeared, and with a harder tone she said, consult with whom? We are your family. Do you not trust us? There it was, the manipulation, the guilt, but this time it was not going to work. I breathed deeply, and I answered her. It is not a matter of trust. It is a matter of responsibility. These are legal documents. I need to understand them. Michael got upset. I saw how he clenched his jaw. Mom, do not make it difficult. It is just a paper to help you. Help me or take everything from me. I did not say it. I just repeated. I need time. 1 week to read it well. Sarah stood up suddenly. She took the papers with rage and said, you are unbelievable. We offer you help and you treat us as if we were criminals. You are so ungrateful. And she went to her room, slamming the door. Michael looked at me with disappointment. He said nothing. He just shook his head and went after her. I was left alone in the living room, trembling, but also feeling something strange. Pride. Because I did not give in. Because I did not sign. Because I said no. And that was a power I had forgotten I had. That night I heard Sarah screaming from her room. I did not understand everything she said, but I heard words like stubborn old stupid. I heard Michael trying to calm her down, and then I heard something that broke my heart. Sarah screamed, if she does not sign, we will have to get her out another way. We cannot keep waiting. This apartment is worth a lot of money, and I am not going to lose it because of your mother. And Michael said nothing. He did not stop her. He did not defend me. There was only silence, and that silence told me everything I needed to know. My son was no longer on my side. Maybe he never had been. Maybe he had always been on the side of his comfort. The next morning I called Mr. Davis. I told him everything that had happened. He told me I had done exactly the right thing, that I should never sign anything, and that now we had to accelerate the plan. He asked me if I was ready to take the next step, change the locks, reclaim my space, legally evict them from my apartment. I told him yes, that I was ready, that I could not live like this anymore, that I preferred to be alone than to feel invaded in my own house. He told me he would get a trusted locksmith, that we would do it on a day when Michael and Sarah were not there, that it would be quick and legal, and that he would be with me for anything. We chose the day, a Friday. Michael had a work conference that would last all day. Sarah had mentioned she would go visit her mother in the afternoon. It would be the perfect moment. Mr. Davis coordinated everything. The locksmith would arrive at 2 in the afternoon. I would call work to say I was sick, and by 4 o'clock my apartment would have new locks. No one could enter without my permission. No one. The idea filled me with terror, but also with a freedom I had not felt in years. Because for the first time in a long time, I was going to decide who entered my life and who stayed out. The days leading up were agony. Sarah acted as if nothing had happened. She kept moving through my house as if it were hers. She kept bringing boxes. She kept making plans. One day, I heard her on the phone talking to someone about remodeling the kitchen. My kitchen. She talked about colors, about new cabinets, about changing everything. As if I no longer existed, as if I had already left, and maybe in her mind she had already erased me. But I was still here. And soon she was going to find out. In the worst way. Thursday night, I almost did not sleep. I stayed awake looking at the ceiling, thinking about everything that was going to happen, about how they would react, about if Michael would ever forgive me, about if I was doing the right thing. But then I remembered Betty's words. A mother's love does not mean letting yourself be trampled on. And I remembered Mr. Davis's words. You are not a bad mother for defending yourself. And I remembered something even more important. I remembered the woman I was before all this, the one who worked 3 shifts, the one who raised a son alone, the one who fought against the world without giving up. That woman was still inside me. She had just been asleep, waiting for the moment to wake up, and tomorrow she was going to wake up roaring. Friday arrived. I got up early. Earlier than usual. I made coffee. I drank it looking out the window. The sun was barely rising. Everything was calm, peaceful. It was ironic, because in a few hours everything was going to explode. Michael left at 7. He gave me a kiss on the forehead. As always, he did not know it would be the last one in a long time. Sarah left at 9. She did not even say goodbye. She just took her purse and left. I heard the door close. I heard her steps moving away down the hallway. And then I breathed. For the first time in months, I breathed deeply without feeling watched, without feeling that someone was judging every move I made. I called work. I said I felt sick, that I could not go. It sounded credible, because my voice was trembling. But it was not from sickness. It was from fear, from nerves, from anticipation. Then I called Mr. Davis. I told him they were gone, that the way was clear. He told me the locksmith would arrive in an hour, that I should get ready, that I should take anything of value I had in the shared areas and put it in my room just in case. I obeyed. I went through my house gathering my things, my husband's vase, the family photos that still hung on the walls, the box of memories I kept in a closet in the living room. I put everything in my room, and with every object I protected, I felt like I was saving pieces of my soul. At 2 o'clock sharp, the doorbell rang. It was the locksmith, a polite young man. He showed me his ID. I explained the situation briefly. He nodded. He told me he had seen cases like this before, that I should not worry, that in half an hour everything would be ready. He started to work. I sat on the sofa watching him, listening to the metallic sounds of the tools, the drill, the new pieces clicking into place. Every sound was a liberation. Every new piece was a shield, a barrier, a way of saying this is mine. And no one else will enter without my permission. 30 minutes later, he handed me 2 sets of new keys. He explained how they worked. He assured me that no one with the old keys could open the door. He wished me luck and left. I stood in front of the door with the new keys in my hand. Shiny, heavy, powerful. I pressed them against my chest and cried. I cried with relief. I cried with fear. I cried with guilt. But above all, I cried with freedom. For the first time in a long time, I felt that my house was mine again, that I was the owner of my life again. I wiped my tears. I took a deep breath, and I started to prepare for what was coming, because I knew that when Sarah arrived and saw she could not enter, she was going to make a scene, a monumental scene, and I had to be ready. Mr. Davis arrived at 4 in the afternoon. He knocked on the door with the code we had agreed on. 3 knocks. Pause. 2 knocks. I opened. He entered with his briefcase and asked me how I felt. I told him the truth, terrified but firm. He smiled. He told me it was normal, that the important thing was not to doubt now, that everything was legal, that it was my right. He handed me an envelope. Inside was a letter he had written himself. It was a formal notification. It said that Michael and Sarah had 30 days to vacate the apartment, that any attempt to enter without my permission would be considered trespassing, that I could call the police if necessary. He explained that when they arrived and could not enter, I should hand them that letter under the door, without opening, without arguing, just the letter and silence. He warned me that they would surely try to manipulate me, that they would scream, that they would cry, that Michael would tell me things that would hurt, that Sarah would call me a monster, but that I should not open that door, that I should not give in, that if I did, everything would have been in vain. He made me promise him I would not open, and I promised him. Although my heart was already breaking just imagining Michael's face when he discovered he could not enter. Mr. Davis stayed with me until 6. We drank tea. We talked about unimportant things. I think he did it to distract me, to calm my nerves, and it worked a little. At 6, he left. He gave me his personal number again. He told me to call him if anything happened, and he left. I was left alone, alone with my new keys, alone with my decision, alone with my fear. The hours passed slowly, so slowly. I sat in the living room, now silent, without boxes, without strangers, without loud music, just me and the silence. A beautiful silence, a silence whose sound I had already forgotten. I turned on the television. I put on the news, but I did not see them. My mind was at the door, waiting, knowing that at any moment everything was going to explode. And then at 11 at night, I heard the elevator. I heard steps. I heard voices. Michael and Sarah. They were arriving. My heart started beating so hard I thought it was going to burst out of my chest. I heard them getting closer. I heard the key enter the lock, and then I heard the sound that would change everything. The sound of a key that does not work. That turns but does not open. That gets stuck. That does not fit. Silence. Then I heard Sarah's voice. What is happening? Why does it not open? Michael tried again. Nothing. He tried once more, and another. And then I heard him say, confused, worried, "It does not work. The key does not work." Sarah tried with her key. Nothing either. And there it began. First it was confusion, then panic, and finally, fury. Sarah started banging on the door. "Mom, open the door. The key does not work. Open up." I did not move. I stayed seated on the sofa, with the envelope in my hands, breathing, just breathing. The banging got louder, more desperate. "Linda, open this door right now. What did you do? You changed the locks. You are crazy." Michael also started banging. "Mom, open up. What is going on? Please, Mom." His voice split my soul. It broke me in two, but I did not get up. I did not go to the door. I stayed there, firm, remembering everything that had happened, everything they had done to me, everything they had planned to do to me. And then Sarah lost control completely. She started screaming like I had never heard her before. "Open this damn door. This is my house. All my things are inside. You cannot do this to us. This is illegal." And she banged. She banged so hard I thought she was going to break the door. The neighbors' lights started to turn on. I heard doors opening. Someone asked what was happening. Sarah screamed that I had thrown them out on the street, that I had changed the locks without warning them, that I was a crazy old woman. And then came the scream that woke up the whole building, the one that made the dogs bark, the one that cut through the walls like a knife. Sarah screamed with all her soul, "Linda, you are going to regret this. I swear you are going to regret this." And she kept banging. Michael tried to calm her down, but she was beside herself. And then he also exploded. He started screaming, "Mom, how could you? Who gave you permission? Open this door now. You cannot do this to us. I am your son." And those words hurt me more than anything else, because he was right. He was my son, the son I raised, the son I loved, and now he was on the other side of the door screaming at me as if I were his enemy. I got up. I walked to the door with the envelope in my hand and slid it underneath. In silence, the envelope appeared on the other side. There was a brief silence. I heard someone picking it up, then the sound of paper tearing, and then I heard Michael's voice, first in silence, then in a low voice, and finally aloud so Sarah could hear. "Eviction notice. You have 30 days to remove your belongings. Any attempt to enter without authorization will be reported to the authorities. Sincerely, Linda." Sarah exploded again, but this time it was not just fury. It was hysteria. It was panic, because she had just understood that she had lost, that her plan had failed, that I was not the stupid old woman she thought. "This cannot be real. This is not legal. You cannot kick us out like this. We live here. We have rights." She screamed with a broken voice. She hit the door, but not with force anymore. Now they were desperate blows from someone who knows they have lost. Michael tried to speak. His voice was different, softer, more broken. "Mom, please, let's talk. Open the door. We can fix this. It does not have to be like this." But I did not answer. I stayed on the other side with my back resting on the door, feeling every blow as if it were against my own heart. But I did not give in. I did not open. Because if I opened in that moment, everything would have been in vain. All the pain, all the fear, all the courage I had gathered to get here. Everything would have been lost in a second of weakness. I heard Betty coming out of her apartment. Her voice was calm but firm. "It is already midnight. You are waking up the whole building. If you do not calm down, I am going to call the police." Sarah turned against her. "This is none of your business, old lady, busybody, mind your own business." But Betty did not flinch. "My business is being able to sleep in peace, and you are disturbing the peace. You have two options. You calm down or I call the police. You decide." Michael intervened. "Mrs. Betty, please. It is a misunderstanding. My mom locked us out. We need to enter." Betty looked at him, and with a voice I had never heard, she told him, "Michael, I have known your mother since she moved into this building. She is a good woman, and if she left you outside, it is because she had her reasons. Good reasons. So please leave, or I will make the call." There was more silence, and then I heard Sarah's steps moving away, going down the stairs. She did not even wait for the elevator. She ran like a wounded animal. Michael stayed a moment longer. I heard his breathing on the other side of the door, heavy, tired, defeated. And then he spoke. But this time he did not scream. He spoke so low I had to get close to the door to hear him. "Mom, I do not understand why you did this. I thought you loved me. I thought I could always count on you. But I guess I was wrong." And then he left. I heard his steps moving away too. Slow, heavy. And when finally the silence arrived, I collapsed. I fell to the floor with my back against the door and cried. I cried like I had not cried in years because I had just lost my son. Or maybe I had just understood that I had lost him a long time ago. I do not know how long I was there on the floor crying, but at some point I heard soft knocks on the door. Betty's code. 3 knocks. Pause, 2 knocks. I got up. I wiped my face. I opened. She entered without saying a word. She hugged me, and I cried again, but this time in the arms of someone who understood me, someone who knew how difficult all this had been. We sat on the sofa. Betty made me tea, like she always did, and when I could finally speak, I asked her, did I do the right thing? She took my hand, looked me in the eyes, and told me, Linda, you did the only thing you could do. Defend yourself. And that is never wrong. Never. She told me she had heard everything. That the other neighbors, too. That everyone knew what Sarah had been doing. That they had seen her coming and going with boxes with strange people. That they had heard the parties. The screams that everyone knew, but no one knew how to help me. And that now everyone was on my side. That if I needed witnesses for any legal matter, she would be the first to testify. Those words gave me a strength I did not know I needed, because I understood that I was not alone, that there were people who saw me, who supported me, who understood my pain. Betty stayed with me until 2 in the morning, and when she left, I felt a little less broken, a little less alone. I went to bed, but I could not sleep. I stayed awake looking at the ceiling, thinking about Michael, about his face when he was a child, about how he hugged me when he was afraid, about how he used to tell me I was the best mom in the world. Where had that boy gone? When had he become the man who screamed at me from the other side of the door? When had he stopped seeing me as his mother to start seeing me as a nuisance? I had no answers, only questions, and pain, much pain. But I also had something else. I had my house back. I had my peace. I had my dignity. And for now, that had to be enough. The following days were strange. The house was in silence, absolute silence. There was no music, no shouting, no boxes, no strange people. Just me. And at first that silence scared me because I had wanted it so much that when I finally had it, I did not know what to do with it. I sat in the living room and just listened. The refrigerator, the cars on the street, the birds in the morning, simple sounds. Sounds I had forgotten existed. And little by little, I started to heal, to recover, to remember what it was like to live without fear, without anxiety, without that constant feeling of being invaded. But Michael did not give up. He started calling me 10 times a day, then 20. I did not answer. Then the messages began. At first they were furious. Mom, this is ridiculous. Open the door. We have to talk. You cannot do this to us. I am going to get a lawyer. But I did not reply. Mr. Davis had told me not to do it, that all communication should be in writing, and through him to protect me to have everything documented. Then the messages changed. They became softer, more manipulative. Mom, I miss you. I do not understand what I did wrong. I have always loved you. Why are you doing this to me? And those messages hurt more because they touched the deepest wound, the guilt, that mother's guilt that never disappears, that voice that tells you that maybe you are the bad one, that maybe you exaggerated, that you should forgive. But then I remembered Sarah with the real estate agent. I remembered the plans to put me in a nursing home. I remembered the power of attorney they wanted me to sign. I remembered every humiliation, every lack of respect, every moment I felt invisible in my own house. And the guilt faded, because what I did was not cruelty. It was survival. It was self-love. It was justice. One afternoon, while cleaning the house, I found something under the sofa, a toy, a small car from when Michael was a child. I picked it up. I cleaned it, and I sat with it in my hands. I remembered when I gave it to him. He was 5 years old. He was so happy. Oh, he played with that car for years, and now it was there, forgotten. under the sofa, like our relationship, forgotten, buried, broken. I cried again, but this time it was different. I did not cry for what I did. I cried for what I lost. Because the truth is, I did not lose my son when I changed the locks. I lost him much earlier. I lost him when he stopped listening to me, when he chose Sarah over me in every argument, when he stopped seeing me as a person with feelings and started seeing me as someone he could take advantage of. Changing the locks only made visible a loss that had already happened a long time ago, and accepting that was the most painful thing of all. I put the car away. I put it in my memory box along with the photos, with the old letters, with everything that remained of the boy I raised, because the man he became was no longer mine, and maybe he never was entirely. A week passed. The messages from Michael became less frequent. The calls too, and one day they simply stopped. Total silence. And I do not know if that gave me relief or broke me more, because it meant he had given up, that he had chosen Sarah, that he had chosen resentment, and that I would have to learn to live with that choice. But it also meant I was free, that I could start over, that I could rebuild my life without fear, without invasions, without manipulation. And although it hurt, although I woke up at night with a tight chest, I knew I had done the right thing, because sometimes loving means letting go, and sometimes surviving means closing doors, even if they are the doors that lead to your own son. 3 weeks after changing the locks, I received a call from Mr. Davis. He told me that Michael had contacted a lawyer, that they were trying to prove that I had no right to kick them out, that they had lived there more than a year, and that gave them rights as tenants. My heart raced. I asked him if they could win. Mr. Davis let out a soft, confident laugh. He told me no, that they never paid rent, that there was no contract, that they lived there by my goodwill, and that goodwill had ended, that any judge would be on my side, especially with the evidence we had, the recordings, the photos, the testimonies. He told me not to worry, that he would take care of everything, and that I would probably receive a letter from Michael's lawyer in a few days, that I should not respond, that I should send it directly to him, and so I did. The letter arrived 4 days later. It was long, full of legal words I barely understood, but the message was clear. Michael accused me of emotional abandonment, of cruelty, of having thrown them out on the street without justification. He said he had taken care of me for years, that he had supported me, that I was acting irrationally due to my age, advanced, that I probably needed psychiatric help. Every word was a knife, because my own son was using my age as a weapon. He was telling a judge that I was senile, that I did not know what I was doing, that I needed someone else to make decisions for me. It was exactly what Sarah had planned from the beginning, and now Michael was executing it. I took the letter and sent it to Mr. Davis. Mr. Davis read the letter and called me 2 hours later. He was upset. I could hear it in his voice. He told me that letter was an insult, pure manipulation, but also a blessing. Because now we had written proof of their intentions, of how they saw me, of how they planned to declare me incompetent to keep my property. He assured me he would respond to that letter with all the evidence we had. The recordings where Sarah talked about the power of attorney, the photos of the real estate people inside my apartment, everything, and that when he finished, any judge would clearly see who the victim was in this story. I felt relief, but also a deep sadness because this was no longer a family fight. It was a legal battle, cold, impersonal, painful. Days turned into weeks. I continued with my routine. I worked. I cleaned offices. I returned home. But now my house was different. It was mine again. Little by little, I started to reclaim my spaces. I took out the horrible furniture Sarah had brought. I threw it in the trash. I put back my old armchair, the one I liked, the one that was comfortable. I rearranged the living room as it was before. I hung my photos on the walls. I put my vase on the table. Every change was a liberation. It was like removing layers of dust I did not even know I had on me. And little by little, my apartment felt like a home again, not like a battlefield. Betty started visiting me more often. We drank tea. We talked. She told me stories of her own children, of how children sometimes disappoint, of how sometimes love is not enough. And her words comforted me because they made me feel less alone in this pain. They helped me understand that I was not the only mother who had to make difficult decisions, that I was not the only one who had to choose between her son and her own survival, and that choosing to survive did not make me a bad mother. It made me human. It made me strong. It made me brave. One day, while cleaning an office, I found a magazine open to an article about family violence. It spoke of how many older adults suffered abuse from their own children. Financial, emotional, psychological abuse. I read every word as if they were talking about me, about my situation, about what I had lived, and I realized something important. I did not exaggerate. No, I was not cruel. I was a victim who had the strength to defend herself, and that was something I should feel proud of, not ashamed. I kept the article. I took it home and put it in my folder of documents, not to show it to anyone, but to remind myself on difficult days that what I lived was real, that I did not imagine it, that I was not crazy. The first month passed, then the second, and then Mr. Davis called me with news. Michael's lawyer had withdrawn the lawsuit. They were no longer going to continue with the trial. When I asked him why, he explained that they probably saw the evidence he sent and realized they had no case, that any judge would see the recordings and understand perfectly what had happened, that continuing to fight would only make them look worse, and that surely Sarah had decided it was better to cut her losses and move on. I felt relief, but also a void, because that meant Michael had chosen. He had decided not to fight for our relationship. He had decided to give up. He had chosen Sarah over me again, and although it was what I expected, it hurt to confirm it. Mr. Davis also told me something else. During the legal process, he had investigated a little more and discovered that Sarah had a record, that she had already done something similar with her previous family, with her first partner. She tried to keep properties that were not hers. She manipulated, she lied, and when they discovered her, she simply left and looked for another victim. Michael was just another victim, and I had been the obstacle she needed to remove from the path. Hearing that filled me with mixed feelings. On one hand, it confirmed that I was not crazy, that my instincts had been correct. But on the other, it meant that my son had been manipulated, deceived, used. And that hurt in another way because it meant that maybe he was also a victim who chose not to see the truth. I tried to contact him once. After knowing all that, I sent him a message, simple, direct. Michael, I need you to know something important about Sarah. Please call me. I waited. 1 day, 2, a week. He never responded. And it was then when I understood that he had already made his decision, that he chose to believe her, that he chose to see me as the villain, and that there was nothing I could do to change it. The truth no longer mattered. Facts no longer mattered because love is blind, and sometimes love makes us choose the wrong people and defend the indefensible. Michael had chosen his path, and I had to accept it, even if inside I was breaking into 1,000 pieces. Months passed. Winter arrived, and with it a strange peace. A peace I had not felt in years. I woke up without anxiety, without fear of finding someone in my space, without fear that something of my life would be taken without my permission. My apartment smelled different now. It smelled of coffee in the mornings, broth in the afternoons. Clean. Mine. I started doing things I had stopped doing. I planted flowers on my balcony. I bought new cushions for the sofa. I painted a wall in my room a soft peach tone that I had always liked. Small changes, small ways to reclaim my space, my life, my identity. Betty introduced me to a group of women in the building. We met on Thursdays, played cards, drank tea, talked, and I realized that many of them had similar stories. Children who did not call, complicated families, disappointments, but they also had laughter. They had friendship. They had life. And they taught me something very important, that family is not always blood. Sometimes family is who chooses to stay, who chooses to see you, who chooses to take care of you. And those women had become my family, my support network, my refuge. One night, watching television, I saw a news story. An older lady had been scammed by her own daughter. They had taken her house, her savings, everything, and left her on the street. The woman cried in the interview. She said she never thought her daughter would do that to her, that she trusted, that she loved, and that she lost everything. And while I watched her cry, I understood something. I could have been her. If I had not acted, if I had not changed the locks, if I had signed that power of attorney today, I would be on the street, without a house, without anything, and Michael and Sarah would be living in my apartment, enjoying what I built, without remorse, without guilt. And that realization erased the last trace of guilt I had left, because I understood that I had not only saved my apartment, I had saved my life. 6 months after changing the locks, my life had found a new rhythm. I woke up early. I did a little exercise, just stretching and walking in the park near my house, something I could never do while Sarah and Michael lived with me. I ate breakfast in peace. I read the newspaper. Small, simple things, but they filled me in a way I had not felt in years. I worked my shifts. I returned home, and my house received me with silence. A silence that no longer scared me. A silence that had become my best companion, because in that silence I could hear myself. I could think. I could heal. Betty organized a small dinner in her apartment. She invited the women from the Thursday group and me. It was beautiful. Homemade food, laughter, stories. And at one moment of the night, Betty raised her glass and said, "I want to toast to Linda for her bravery, for teaching us that it is never too late to defend ourselves, for reminding us that self-love is not selfishness, it is survival." All the women toasted, and I cried, but this time not from sadness, but from gratitude, because those women saw me. They valued me. They respected me. And that was something I had not felt in a long time. I felt part of something, of a community, of a chosen family, and that healed wounds I did not even know I had. One afternoon while cleaning an office downtown, I received a call from an unknown number. Usually I do not answer numbers like that, but something made me do it. It was a woman's voice, young, nervous. "Mrs. Linda, sorry to bother you. My name is Jessica. I am a friend of Michael. I need to talk to you. It is urgent." My heart stopped. I asked her what was happening. She hesitated for a moment, and then she said, "It is about Sarah. You need to know the truth. Can we meet?" I accepted. We agreed to meet the next day, in a coffee shop near my house. That night I could not sleep. My mind was spinning. What truth? What had happened? Was Michael okay? The unanswered questions kept me awake until dawn. I arrived at the coffee shop 15 minutes early. I ordered tea. I sat at a table in the back and waited. Jessica arrived on time. She was a woman of about 30, elegant, with sad eyes. She sat in front of me, ordered a coffee, and started talking. She told me she knew Michael from work, that they had been friends for years, that she knew Sarah from the beginning, and that she had never liked her, that she always saw something fake in her, something calculating, but she never said anything because it was not her place. She told me that after Michael and Sarah left my apartment, things got worse, that they rented a small place, that Michael worked double shifts to pay the rent, that Sarah continued with her business but spent everything on clothes and luxuries, that they fought constantly. Jessica looked me in the eyes and told me, Mrs. Linda Sarah cheated on Michael several times, and when he found out, she convinced him it was his fault, that he did not attend to her, that he worked too much. Michael forgave her, Because he is trapped. Because she manipulates him just like she did with you. I felt a deep pain in my chest. For my son. For what he was living. But Jessica had not finished. She continued. And 2 weeks ago, Michael called me crying. He told me Sarah had left. That she left him. That she took everything of value he had. His savings, his computer, his expensive clothes, everything. And she disappeared. Michael is destroyed. He is alone, and he is barely starting to realize everything, of how she used him, of how she used both of you. I asked her why she was telling me this. She sighed and told me, because Michael is not going to call you. He has too much pride, too much shame. But he needs his mother. He is broken. And I know you are also hurt. But I thought you should know, that you should have the option to decide what to do with this information. I thanked her. I told her I needed time to process it. She nodded. She gave me her number, and she left. I stayed sitting in that coffee shop 1 hour more, with the cold tea in my hands, looking out the window, processing, feeling, trying to understand what to do with all that. Part of me wanted to run out, find Michael, hug him, tell him everything was going to be fine. But another part, the part that was still healing, told me to wait, that this was not my responsibility, that Michael had to learn that lesson alone. That night, I spoke with Betty. I told her everything. She listened without interrupting me. And when I finished, she told me something I will never forget. Linda. The fact that Sarah left him does not erase what Michael did to you. It does not erase the screams. It does not erase the letter from his lawyer. It does not erase that he chose to believe her instead of you. You can have compassion for his pain, but you do not have to rescue him. He is an adult, and the consequences of his decisions are his, not yours. She was right. And although it hurt, although my mother's heart wanted to run and save him, my head knew I could not, that I should not. Because if I did, I would be teaching him that he could treat me badly and that I would always be there. And that was not the lesson I wanted to give him. 2 weeks passed, and then I received a message from Michael. It was the first time he wrote to me in months. The message said, "Mom, I know I have no right to ask you for anything. I know I hurt you, but I need to talk to you, please." My first instinct was to respond immediately, but I stopped. I breathed deeply and called Mr. Davis. I asked him what I should do. He told me, "Mrs. Linda, you can talk to him if you want, but set boundaries. Meet in a public place, not in your apartment, and do not promise anything. Just listen. See if there is real regret or just need." I followed his advice. I responded to Michael. I told him we could meet in a coffee shop. The next day at 3 in the afternoon, he accepted. I arrived at the coffee shop nervous. I had not seen Michael in 6 months. I did not know how he was going to react, how I was going to feel. I sat and waited. He arrived 10 minutes late, and when I saw him, my breath went away. He looked terrible. He had lost weight, had deep circles under his eyes, wrinkled clothes. He looked tired, broken. He sat in front of me. He said nothing for a moment, just looked at me. And then I saw something in his eyes, something I had not seen for a long time, guilt, remorse, pain. He started speaking, with a broken voice. "Mom, I do not even know where to start. I have been an idiot, a horrible son. I treated you badly. I accused you of terrible things, and all because I was blind, because I did not want to see the truth about Sarah." He kept talking. He told me everything. How Sarah had manipulated him, how she convinced him that I was the problem, how she lied to him about so many things, how she used him, and how finally she left him with nothing. He cried. My son, now an adult, cried in front of me as he did when he was a child, and my heart broke, but I did not move. I did not hug him, I did not console him, because I needed to hear more. I needed to know if he really understood what he had done to me, or if he was just looking for comfort because Sarah had left him. I asked him directly, Michael, if Sarah had not left you, would you be here now? Would you have realized anything? He kept silent. He thought. And then with brutal honesty, he said probably not. And that kills me inside because it means I had to lose everything to realize what I had, what I did to you. That honesty hurt me, but also gave me hope because it meant he was being real, that he was not trying to manipulate me, that he was really facing his mistakes. I asked him what he expected from me, what he wanted. He took a deep breath and said, "I do not expect you to forgive me. I do not expect you to accept me again. I just needed to tell you I am sorry that you were right about everything, that I should have listened to you, that I should have defended you, and that losing your trust is the highest price I have paid in my life. Higher than losing Sarah. More than losing the money, losing you was the worst, and it was my fault." His words reached deep inside me because they were the words I had needed to hear. No excuses, no justifications, just responsibility, just truth. I told him I appreciated his honesty, I appreciated his apology, but that I could not simply forget everything that had happened, that I needed time, that I needed to see actions, not just words, that I had to rebuild broken trust, and that would not happen overnight. He nodded. He told me he understood that he would not ask for more than I was willing to give, that he would respect my pace, and that if one day I managed to forgive him, it would be a gift he did not deserve. We stayed in silence a moment, and then I asked him, "Are you okay? Do you have a place to live?" He nodded. He told me he was renting a small room, that he worked hard to recover, that he was going to therapy, that he was trying to understand how he had reached so far, how he had lost so much of himself. We said goodbye there in the coffee shop. There were no hugs. There were no promises. Just a silent understanding that this was barely the beginning of something new, or maybe the definitive end. I did not know, and it was okay not to know. I returned home with mixed feelings, relief for having heard a real apology, sadness for everything that had been lost, and caution, much caution, because words are easy, but actions are what count. And I needed to see if Michael had really changed, or if he was just hurt and vulnerable. Time would tell, and I had all the time in the world, because now my time was mine, my life was mine, and no one would take it from me again. Weeks passed. Michael sent me messages from time to time, never asking for anything, just sharing how he was, that he had finished a project, at work, that he had gone to the park where he played as a child, that he was reading a book I had recommended years ago. Small messages, little windows into his life. I responded with kindness, but with distance, because I was still protecting my peace. I was still healing, and I was not going to rush that process for anyone, not even for my own son. One day, Betty asked me if I was going to forgive him. I told her I did not know, that forgiveness was not a switch I could turn on and off, that it was a long, painful, complicated process, and that maybe it would never arrive completely. And that was okay. I could live with that uncertainty. 3 months after our meeting in the coffee shop, Michael asked to see me again. This time he said he had something to show me. I accepted. We met in the same place. He arrived with a cardboard box full of things. He put it on the table and started taking out objects. My vase, the one Sarah had put in the closet, family photos that had disappeared, my old sheets, the blanket my husband had given me, things I thought I had lost forever. I asked him how he had them. He explained that when Sarah left, she left several boxes. Boxes with things she had taken from my apartment without my permission, things she thought to sell or throw away. Michael had kept them. He had cleaned them. He had protected them. And now he was returning them to me. It is not enough to compensate for everything he told me, but I wanted you to recover what was always yours. I took the vase in my hands. I cleaned it with my sleeve, and tears started falling. Because it was not just a vase. It was a piece of my husband, a piece of my history, a piece of me I thought lost. I looked at Michael, and for the first time in months, I saw my son. Not the man who screamed at me, not the man who chose Sarah before me, but the boy I raised, the boy who loved me, the boy who was still there, hidden under all the pain and mistakes. I thanked him with a broken voice, and for the first time since the day I changed the locks, I felt that maybe there was hope, that perhaps not everything was lost, that maybe we could rebuild something different from what we had before, stronger, more honest, more real. Michael started visiting me once a month, always in public places, never in my apartment. I was not ready for that yet, and he respected it. We talked about simple things, worked the weather movies. We never forced deep conversations. We let the relationship rebuild itself slowly, like a plant that was uprooted and now tried to grow again. It was fragile, it was delicate, but it was real. And that was enough for now. Betty told me she was proud of me, that I was handling everything with wisdom, that I did not give up too fast, but neither did I close the door completely, that I was finding balance. And she was right. I was learning something new, that a mother's love does not mean sacrificing everything. It means setting healthy boundaries. It means teaching respect. It means taking care of myself so I can take care of others. 1 year after changing the lock, something extraordinary happened. Michael invited me to dinner at a nice restaurant. I went nervous. I did not know what to expect. He was already seated when I arrived. He looked different, better, healthier, more at peace. We sat down. We ordered food. And then he took something out of his pocket. It was a key, a simple key. He handed it to me. I asked him what it was. He smiled with sadness and told me, "It is the key to my new apartment, a place I paid for alone with my work without help from anyone. I want you to have it, not because I expect you to come, but because I want you to know that there will always be a place for you in my life. When you are ready, if one day you are." I took the key. I looked at it and felt something strange. Pride. Pride for my son, for his growth, for his effort, for his independence. I told him I was proud of him, that I could see how much he had changed, how much he had worked on himself. And then I did something I had not done in a year. I hugged him. It was a short, shy hug, but real. And when we separated, I saw tears in his eyes. "Thank you for not giving up on me," he said. "Thank you for teaching me the hardest but most important lesson of my life." I replied that children do not come with an instruction manual, that we both had made mistakes, that we both had learned, and that this was not a perfect, happy ending, but simply a new beginning, a more honest one, healthier, one where we both knew our boundaries and respected them. In the following months, our relationship continued to improve, slowly but constantly. Michael invited me to his apartment. I went. It was small, but clean, organized. His. There was no trace of Sarah, nor of the past. Just a man rebuilding his life from scratch. He cooked for me. A simple meal. Pasta, with tomato sauce. The same one I prepared for him when he was a child. And while we ate, we talked about things we had never talked about. Of his fears, of his regrets, of how Sarah filled a void he did not even know he had, and of how losing me almost destroyed him. I told him about my process, of the fear I felt, of the loneliness after changing the locks, of the night I spent crying, wondering if I had done the right thing, of Betty, and of the women in the building who became my family. Michael asked me if one day he could return to my apartment. I told him I did not know, that that space remained my sanctuary, my refuge, and that I needed to keep it that way for now. He understood. He did not insist. He just said that when I was ready, he would be there, and that meanwhile he would keep showing me with actions that he had changed, that he was trustworthy again, that he deserved a second chance, not with words, with deeds. That night when I returned home, I sat in the living room in my old armchair, looking at my apartment. The walls, I had recovered the space I had defended, and I felt something I had not felt in a long time. a complete peace, because I had won. Not a war against my son, but a war for me, for my dignity, for my right to exist in my own space, without fear. 2 years after changing the locks, my life was completely different. I continued working, but fewer hours. I had saved enough to reduce my shifts. I spent more time with Betty and the women in the building. I had adopted a cat, an old cat that no one wanted from the shelter. His name was Sparky, and he sat with me every night on the sofa. Michael and I saw each other every 2 weeks, sometimes in restaurants, sometimes in his apartment, and finally one day I invited him to mine. It was strange having him there again, but this time it was different. This time he was my guest, not someone who lived there, not someone who made decisions about my space, just a guest who respected my rules, who valued being there, who understood the privilege of crossing that door. We drank coffee. We talked. He looked at the photos on the wall, the same ones Sarah had removed and that were now back in their place. He asked me about the cat. I told him how I had found him. And in a moment of the afternoon when the sunlight entered through the window, I realized something. I had forgiven. Not completely, maybe never completely, but enough. Enough to have a relationship, enough to have peace, enough to move on. Forgiveness had not been a moment. It had been 2 years of small steps, of respected boundaries, of actions that demonstrated change. And now I could finally breathe in the same room as my son without feeling resentment. When Michael left that afternoon, I stood in front of my door, the door with the new locks, the locks that changed everything. I thought of the woman I was 2 years ago, scared, invaded, lost in her own house, and I compared her with the woman I am now, strong, independent owner of her life. And I smiled, because I understood that protecting your peace is not selfishness, it is survival, and changing the locks was only the beginning of recovering my life. I learned that love does not mean enduring everything, that saying no is an act of self-love, that boundaries do not destroy relationships. Boundaries protect relationships that deserve to exist, and that sometimes the greatest lesson you can give your children is not your sacrifice, it is your dignity. That night, while I prepared dinner, Sparky rubbed against my legs. Betty knocked on my door to invite me to play cards, and my phone vibrated with a message from Michael. "Thank you for today, Mom. I love you." And I understood that this was happiness, not perfect, not without scars, but real, honest, mine. I closed my eyes. I took a deep breath and whispered to myself, sometimes to recover your peace, it is not the lock that must change. It is the people you let in.